Greetings. In this episode, I will continue my quest to find you interesting day trips into each one of Indiana's 92 counties. Today, we will visit Greensburg, Indiana, which is the Decatur County seat. Listeners can find complete information about Greensburg and other places around southeastern Indiana by purchasing my book, Southeast Indiana Day Trips, from my Road Trip Indiana series. The book includes much more information than I can put in these podcasts. This is the first book in the series and the only one available now. I will have the rest. There will be 9 altogether as the year progresses. With rising gas prices, many Hoosiers, including my wife and myself, are choosing to vacation closer to home. Using this podcast, I will tell you about the many places here in Indiana you can visit and has some unique. 1863, it became a temporary armory while troops bivouacked on the lawn. The treasurer's office held provisions to feed 10 regiments. The 7th Regimental Band played weekly on the square before being militarized. Many political figures have given speeches from the steps. It was placed on the National Register of Historic Places on April 4, 1973. Historical markers can only include short sketches of information. I have written a bit more about the courthouse and the tree. Thomas Hendrick's double log cabin, located on the current Taylor Avenue, served as the first Decatur County courthouse. The first Decatur County Commissioner meeting took place in that home on May 4, 1822. The county used this building as a courthouse until 1827. On January 15, 1825, the Board of Commissioners met and drew up requirements for a new courthouse. On March 7th, the county advertised for bids to construct the new courthouse in the center of the town square in Greensburg. County officers occupied this new courthouse on May 1st, 1827. The building served as a courthouse until it was condemned in 1854. Raising of the structure occurred later that summer. Designed by architect Edwin May, construction of the Decatur County Courthouse began in 1854 and was completed in 1860. Many consider the Romanesque Revival building one of the finest examples of that type of architecture in the United States. President-elect Abraham Lincoln made a brief stop in Greensburg on February the 12th, 1861, as he traveled by train to his inauguration on March the 4th, 1861, in Washington, D.C. A major renovation of the courthouse took place in 1890. A stucco covering was applied over the brick in 1903. This covering was removed in 1972. The architect, Edwin May, lived from July the 23rd, 1823 until February the 27th, 1880. Native of Boston, Massachusetts, May moved to Indiana and worked as an architect. His work includes several courthouses and public buildings in Indiana. May received commission to design the new Indiana State House in 1878. During his final project, he became incapacitated and died after traveling to Florida to recuperate. The tree on the tower first appeared in 1870. Shortly after its appearance, 4 more trees appeared. City fathers feared that the trees would damage the roof and hired a steeplejack in 1888 to remove all but 2. One of these trees died, but the other grew to a height of about 15 feet. This one died, but another grew in its place. Thus, there have been a continuous line of trees growing on the roof of the courthouse since 1870. Early on, the tree was identified as an aspen. However, an examination by Purdue foresters has determined the present one is a mulberry. You'll find the Decatur County Courthouse at 150 Courthouse Square, Greensburg, Indiana. 4 set races and earning the nickname Crip, short for cripple. He liked to blast past people on his bike at a high rate of speed, a feat that usually ended with him crashing the bike and adding more scrapes to the ones he already had. As bicycling craze died down, automobiles took their place. He became involved in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. His work at getting the speedway paved to its first nickname, the Brickyard. He conceived the idea of a transcontinental highway and worked tirelessly to get funding for the Lincoln Highway that eventually spanned 12 states on its route from Times Square in New York to its terminus at Lincoln Park in San Francisco. His next big project was to take on a north-south highway. Called the Dixie Highway, he managed to get this highway built after another huge effort. His many business ventures netted him a fortune and became a millionaire. Unfortunately, he lost his fortune in the stock market crash of 1929. Though he did get involved in more projects, he never managed to rebuild his lost fortune. He died almost penniless on July the 15th, 1939. At his death, he considered himself a failure. However, historians feel differently. A 1998 survey of 58 historians placed him among the 50 most influential Americans of all times. The Automotive Hall of Fame inducted him in 1971. Another historical marker of interest in Decatur County is located in the tiny hamlet of Kingston at 4783 East County Road 280 North. The marker states, Carolyn and her 4 children escaped Kentucky slave owners October the 31st, 1847. They crossed the Ohio River near Madison. After passing near here, Fugit Township black and white residents hid the family close to Clarksburg. While hidden, the family seized by white resident but escaped before the owner could claim them. Residents separated the family to avoid another capture. Side 2, family members safely escorted them from Decatur County and reunited in Union County. Family reached Canada. The Underground Railroad refers to a widespread network of a diverse people in the 19th century which aided slaves escaping freedom from the southern United States. I have expanded on the topic with this brief history. Carolyn and her 4 children, managed to escape their master, George Ray of Kentucky, in 1847. Using the network of Underground Railroad, she crossed the Ohio River and, again using the railroad network, made her way north to a place near Clarksburg, Indiana. Aided by Luther Donnell and free blacks in the Snelling settlement community located near Clarksburg, the family escaped from the slave hunters that captured them and eventually made their way to Canada. Luther Donnell lived from 1809 to 1868. Natives of northern Kentucky, Donnell grew to hate the institution of slavery at an early age. His family and several others in the area formed the Kentucky Abolition Society in 1807. The family migrated out of the area to Ripley, Ohio, then on to Decatur County, Indiana. They became involved in the Underground Railroad movement and organized the Decatur Anti-Slavery Society in 1836. It was his involvement with the abolition movement and the aid he gave to escaping slave Carolyn that caused his conviction in 1847 of aiding and abetting an escaping slave. Free black Joseph Snelling purchased 56 acres of land in northeastern corner of the newly established Decatur County and Fugit Township. His purchase attracted other blacks to the area, and by 1850, the area had 22 households and 151 free blacks living there. The community became involved with the Decatur Anti-Slavery Society and helped move escaped slaves through the area until about 1856, when the community migrated to Cass County, Michigan. This migration occurred after Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. The white village of Kingston nearby had a substantial population of abolitionists. A number of free blacks are buried in the Kingston Cemetery and another cemetery with about 30 unmarked graves. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 reinforced the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793. This act made aiding and abetting an escaping slave a crime and placed fines on those that defied it. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 reinforced this act with stricter fines and penalties. Congress repealed this law in 1864 during the ravages of the Civil War. This marker ties into another marker located near the courthouse on the square. The marker, Donnell v. State, 1852. The marker states, Side 1, Luther Donnell was convicted in Decatur County, 1849, of aiding fugitive slaves. Carolyn and her 4 children to escape to Canada. In Donnell v. State, the Indiana Supreme Court reversed the conviction, claiming that under U.S. Supreme Court decision in Prigg v. Pennsylvania, federal law superseded a state law regarding aid to fugitive slaves. Side 2, Prigg, a pro-slavery decision, was used in this case and elsewhere to benefit the anti-slavery clause. The Underground Railroad refers to a widespread network of diverse people in the 19th century who aided slaves escaping to freedom in the southern U.S. Again, I have expanded on the topic. As a side note to the trial and overturned conviction, the owner of the slave, George Ray, sued Luther Donnell for damages. The conviction required Donnell to pay a fine of $125 and to compensate Ray $3,000 for the cost of the slaves, for the value of the slaves. Donnell paid the judgment and the fine. Legend infers that other abolitionists in the area banded together to help Donnell pay the fine and the judgment. When the Indiana Supreme Court overturned the judgment, the state repaid the fine. There is no information on whether Donald received his judgment back from Ray. While visiting Greensburg, you will find some interesting little stores on the streets surrounding the square, as well as a couple of fine restaurants ready to sate your hunger, as well as a pretty 16-acre park that features a 10-acre lake, walking trails, and a playground. Also at the park, you'll find shelter houses, picnic tables, tennis court, horseshoe pits, paddle boats, and a lighted basketball court. The court is located at 1650 West Park Road, Greensburg, Indiana, 47240. Find out more about these Indiana day trip destinations with many more by purchasing the book Southeast Indiana Day Trips. You can find it on my website, www.mossyfeetbooks, on the Road Trip Indiana category. Just scroll down to categories, click the Road Trip Indiana series. There are links to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, and other online booksellers. You may choose to purchase the book in ebook or softbound versions. An audiobook version is available on Google Play. You can also order the book direct from me, the author, on the webpage. If you wish me to sign the book, just send an email to mossyfeetbooks@gmail.com requesting a signed book and instructions on how you want me to address it. Note, if you send me an email, I will add you to my contact list. Readers on the contact list will receive an email from me announcing when I publish a new book. If you do not want to add me to add you to the list, tell me and I will not do so. Listeners to this podcast that want email notification of my releases can just send me an email requesting addition to the list. You can choose to have your name removed at any time. If you browse the website, you will find dozens of sample chapters, one for each of my book. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and thank you for listening.